I will explain the process from the Russo-Japanese War to the Pacific War. In this article, I will explain the history of the Imperial Navy after the Russo-Japanese War. In the Russo-Japanese War, the Imperial Navy destroyed the navy of the Russian Empire. Japan became the world's third largest naval power in both name and reality. However, it was also an expensive fleet that was disproportionate to Japan's national power. After the Sino-Japanese War of 1894, Japan embarked on a naval buildup, with Russia as a hypothetical enemy. This is the so-called 6-6 Fleet Project. The plan was to build 6 new battleships and 6 new cruisers and to operate a new fleet around them. The cost of these new ships was $310 million for 10 years. Since the expenditure for 1896 was $85 million, this means that the military expenditure for the year amounted to about 40% of the total expenditure. Japan felt threatened by Russia and its people responded in kind, to the extent that such a ridiculous budget was passed. And with the Imperial Navy's complete victory over the Russian Navy, the maritime threat in the waters around Japan was gone. However, the Navy did not want to give up its once acquired interests. They looked for a new enemy. It was the United States. After the Russo-Japanese War, American sentiment toward Japan deteriorated markedly. This was because Japan no longer hid its ambition to expand into China. The US also wanted to acquire concessions there. Against this background, the Navy tried to draw huge military expenditures from the nation with the US as a virtual enemy. In 1907, as part of a new national defense policy, 8-8 Fleet Plan was drafted. This was a new fleet operating plan with a core of 8 battleships and 8 cruisers less than 8 years old. According to this plan, 1 new battleship and cruiser would be built each year. However, in 1906, a new type of battleship, the Dreadnought, developed in England, was born. This battleship was accompanied by revolutionary technological innovations that made all previous battleships obsolete. The Dreadnought had a single-caliber giant cannon and was capable of high-speed navigation using steam turbines. Until then, battleships had main and secondary guns of various calibers, each of which required range measurements. A single caliber made it possible to simplify those calculations. In addition, the Imperial Japanese Navy demonstrated during the Battle of the Sea of Japan that with sufficient fire training, the accuracy of large-caliber guns could be improved. The appearance of the Dreadnought sparked a worldwide competition to build new battleships. The Imperial Navy also decided that the new battleships to be built would be Dreadnought-class battleships. However, the construction cost of the Dreadnought-class battleships was much higher than that of the previous ones, and the plan seemed to have been abandoned as the cost was beyond the feasibility of the project with Japan's national strength. The booming economy of Japan after World War I provided a good opportunity to realize the plan, and in 1920, the budget for the 8-8 Fleet Plan was passed by the Congress. However, the maintenance cost of the fleet, when completed, was expected to be 600 million yen compared to Japan's expenditure of 1.5 billion yen at the time, making the plan unfeasible by any means. However, the Navy also envisioned a plan to further strengthen its forces, which would require such a financial burden that the realization of the plan would be weighed against the bankruptcy of the nation. However, this situation was also true for the major powers. The U.S. Navy, under the Great Navy Act, planned to build a fleet of 6 ships, each consisting of 8 battleships as its main force. This plan was aimed at becoming the world's second largest naval power, surpassing Germany. The fleet-building competition was led by Great Britain and Germany, who increased the number of battleships they built in order to surpass each other's war potential. This competition was financially burdensome for the financially strong Western powers. Moreover, the European nations, which had spent a huge amount of money in World War I, did not welcome any further arms race. In 1921, at the proposal of U.S. President Harding, the 5 victorious nations held the Washington Conference on Disarmament in order to limit this arms race. It was agreed that the ratio of the total displacement of British, US, and Japanese-owned ships would be 5 to 3. The ambassador plenipotentiary, Tomosaburo Kato, a politician with a naval background and the proponent of the 8-8 Fleet Plan, accepted the conference proposal. He knew that Japan could not keep up with the current arms race. The conclusions of the Washington Conference on Disarmament were generally received favorably in Japan. Some people were dissatisfied with the fact that Japan's mainstay ship fleet was reduced to 60% of the US and British mainstay ship fleets. However, government control of the military was still in effect at this time, considering that the London Disarmament Conference of 1930 had devolved into the affair of the Supreme Command interference and violation of the rights. This matter will be discussed in the next video. At this conference, it became impossible to build the Dreadnought-class battleships, and instead, each country built heavy cruisers to replace battleships. However, since the drainage capacity and the guns to be installed were determined, they were built accordingly, and are also called treaty-type cruisers. The design concepts of each country differed greatly in this regard. The Japanese emphasized offensive capability, placing emphasis on torpedo attack performance and installing an 8-inch gun that was just barely within regulations. This meant sacrificing crew comfort. The US focused on gunnery, equipping her with 9 main guns, emphasizing the number of aircraft stored, and truncating torpedoes. The British emphasized the defense of sea lanes with their colonies, so they placed more emphasis on crew accommodation to adapt to long voyages. As a result, the cruisers were inferior to their American and Japanese counterparts in terms of offensive capability. The Washington Conference on Disarmament made the military keenly aware that the United States would be the most problematic country for Japan's expansion into the Pacific. It was after this conference that both the US and Japan began to regard each other as virtual enemies and to formulate war strategies. In the next article, I will explain the Navy's development of aircraft carriers and the London Conference on Disarmament. If you enjoyed this article, please subscribe to our channel and click the like button.